Welcome to Chamber Talk. I'm your host, Andrew Gregson, and our guest today is Joe Baldo, the founder and executive director of Higher Ground, and he's joined also with Jordan Barrera, and you're the director of communications, right? Excellent. Well, thank you both for coming in today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
So just before we start the episode, as you saw, we were in this building, this other building that we're not usually in. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Joe Lins of Century 21 Discovery, who also put that great sign out there for everybody, if you're looking on the video channel, for lending us this conference room, which he's lent us out to do our podcast in whilst we're waiting for our place to be renovated after our April fire. Well, again, thank you for both joining me today. I really do appreciate it. And we're going to start with you, Joe. I think it's only important to do so.
Okay.
So, Joe, can you tell us a little bit, and the listeners, a little bit about, what inspired you about finding Higher Ground, where you originally started, all that sort of stuff?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that I started my own little production company back in 1986, and had a great career. Certainly enjoyed everything that I was doing. It grew much faster than I thought it would, and I moved it from the Los Angeles area down to Orange County. Somewhere around 2006, 2007, I had, I guess, what you would call the midlife. It wasn't a crisis, but it was a midlife episode.
Change, yeah.
Yeah, and what it was one of gratitude. I kind of took a seat back, looked at where I had come from, where I was, where I thought I wanted to go, and realized that everything that I had was a gift. That, yes, I worked hard, and my whole family worked hard, but people work hard and they go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no guarantee on that. Sorry. And so with that, realizing that from my business aspect, my personal life, my health, my faith, my wife, my children, it was all just off the charts, so much more than I ever thought it would be. And one Sunday in church, the priest's homily was on the verse, "To those much has been given, much is expected." And that just really hit me, Andrew. And I thought, wow, that whoever wrote it for me. And so I went out in search of ministry and tried several things, whether it was feeding the homeless or reading to the Blind Children's Center. I assisted at our church in a funeral direction.
Oh, wow.
Preparing for funerals.
I've never heard anyone ever say that before.
Yeah, well, when a family calls a church and says, my mom died and we need to set up a funeral, and someone has to sit down with them and say, okay, these are the readings, these are the songs, this is kind of what people normally do, but
Sure.
There's other options because the priest isn't going to do it.
Right.
And so volunteers. And so I did that for about 6 months. The point is that wherever I was, I always told people, I'm in the search mode. I don't know if this is it or not. And people are very open to giving suggestions, as they are in life, right?
Sure.
And so, Joe, you know what you should do?
Yeah.
You know what you should look into? And it was actually a homeless person at one of the soup kitchens that told me that he knew that I needed to go to prison. And I said, okay.
In a good way, hopefully.
Yeah. I said, what are we talking about here? He goes, well, look, I've been in and out of prisons my whole life. And the older we get, the more difficult it is to have visitors. People they give up on you.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
And I thought, okay. And in the back, I thanked him. I said, Larry, thank you very much for that suggestion. In the back of my mind, I said, oh, heck no, I am not doing that. About 3 weeks of waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, Joe, you're a real hypocrite. I already told God, whatever it is you're calling me to, I'm open to it.
Right.
And I was open to the other things.
Sure.
But not
Why
that.
not that? Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And so, Andrew, with that in mind, I, out of guilt, I looked into it. And it was very interesting. And so I went into it a little deeper. And then I found out that they don't just let you into prison. You actually have to be certified for it and whatnot and have to get a badge or whatever.
Sure.
And so I went through all the steps. And again, it continued to be very intriguing. And I ended up in juvenile hall working with kids that normally I would look at them and say, boy, that kid really messed up somewhere, right? Talk about being judgmental. However, the first day I was there, and by the way, the work that I was doing, the volunteer work, is volunteer in probation. And so what that means is it's one-on-one tutoring, if you will, or one-on-one mentoring is probably a better word. But really what it is just one-on-one listening. A loving heart and a listening ear is what it is. And I learned in that first day with 3 male teenagers that their life was, unfortunately, they were dealt a very poor hand of cards.
Okay.
And because of that, they had to deal with all the problems that they were challenged with. In just reflecting on me and my life growing up and whatnot, had I had those challenges, I would have been in just as bad a shape as them.
Sure.
And so the empathy kicked in as opposed to the judgmental. And I was hooked. And so what happened is that my commitment was 3 hours on a Wednesday afternoon. But then it was Monday and Wednesday. And then it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And keep in mind, I had my production company.
Sure.
And it got to the point where I was there almost every afternoon. And my employees were, Joe, what are you doing? We could have used you yesterday.
Right.
And so I knew that I was being called.
Right.
I had a large list of kids, and whenever I spoke with a youth, there would be 2 or 3 others that would knock on their door afterwards because they could hear.
Yeah.
And they'd say, hey, could you come talk with me? And so, people always say that they were called by God. I was called by homies.
Right.
And it's just the way it happened.
Yeah.
And so knowing what I needed to do, but didn't want to do it, I needed to go full time in juvenile hall. And so I sold my company. Didn't want to sell it. Cried like a baby when I did.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
But with that in mind, I went full time 7 days a week as a volunteer.
Right.
And I can only share with you that what happened next was nothing that I expected. But of course, I learned. I learned so much. That was one of the things I didn't expect, right? I got a whole different view on life, especially right here in Southern California. And so with that, I knew that the kids who we were ministering to in the hall needed about 10 times the help on the outs. And so I turned in my badge on a Friday and stood out as close as I could to the release door on Monday, welcoming them. I offered them $10 because they didn't have money. Right. I wanted to make sure they got home safely. But if they felt comfortable with me, then I was willing to drive them home. Okay. No one ever took the $10. Wow. And we had that relationship, right? I was there for almost 3 years.
Sure.
And so driving them back to their apartment complex, the compliment that I received was, hey, Joe, park it right here and then come on in. They wanted me to meet their family. Wow. They wanted their family and their friends to meet me.
Right.
What an honor.
Yeah.
And so with that, I knew that relationship that I thought I had on my end with them was certainly confirmed.
Sure.
So instead of a 5 or 10 minute drop off, it was an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Of course, right.
And I met several people and heard their stories and their challenges. And so maybe it was the aunt that was hooked on meth, or maybe there were older brothers that were in a gang but really never wanted to be in the gang and they would love to get out of a gang. And so with that is how Higher Ground got started. So once I had so many kids on the outs, not only from the original nucleus of the ones that I knew in the hall, but also all of their family and friends, I didn't have time to wait at juvenile hall outside the door. Of course,
yeah, you're too busy now.
I couldn't just go to one apartment complex in one city. So I asked these teens, tell me where your nurse park is. Let's pick an afternoon and I'll meet up and I'll bring some of my friends. And so on Wednesday, I would be in Anaheim. On Thursday, I'd be in Santa Ana. And I would bring as many of my friends as I could. I used to play baseball, so I had baseball buddies, but also a lot of church friends. And so we would play whatever the kids wanted to, which was normally soccer, but then we eat. So I'd bring the pizzas or the tacos or whatever it was for the day, always varying it so it wasn't the same stuff. And that is where the mentoring came in. And so consequently, at the end of the day, I'd say, if you had a good time, you want to come back next week? Oh, hell yes.
Right.
Okay, good. Do me a favor and invite more people.
Right.
And so these groups grew.
Wow.
And again, that furthered. At that point in time, then I needed to come up with a name.
Right.
Because friends of mine were like, geez, Joe, you're buying all this food and whatnot. This got to be costly. I'm like,
Sure.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, I had sold my company.
Yeah, but that only lasts for so long, Joe.
I know that. I know that.
Still got bills.
True. But for starters, it was a great way to start. And of course, people kicked in, right?
Right.
So they'd write a check for $100 or whatever and
Sure.
say, this is for your pizza money or whatever.
Right.
By the way, could I get a receipt for that so I can write it off?
Sure.
I'm like, I could write something up, but so I needed to be a nonprofit.
Sure.
And that is how the whole 501c3 happened.
That makes sense.
And so again, things just progressed naturally, not planned, but I was just led. And I know that might sound hokey to people that don't believe, but I was clearly led. So
I think a lot of us are led in different ways, and it depends. You're right about some people believe that it's God, other people think it's something else, or you're pulled by the universe and whatever else.
There you go.
But at the end of the day, I think sometimes when you hear such amazing stories like yours there, it usually is through with, like you said, it was in your time, it was somebody who's reading a scripture and it just spoke to you. Yeah. Other people, it might be you met somebody in the street, they said something, you walk away and you're thinking ages over that, whatever they said,
right.
And then it just changes your life. So it makes total sense. It really does. What an amazing story. Like, it really is.
It is.
Like, I can't believe you didn't want to sell it here today. Like, what are you doing? That's awesome. So just because, you mentioned, of course, the Chamber's all about business.
Yeah.
Was it very difficult for you to find somebody to buy a production company, or are there loads of people out there going, God, he's a pain in my backside, I'll buy him out?
So that's a whole nother story.
Sure.
So if you don't mind, I'll share very quickly. So again, never selling a company before, right? It's all I knew for my, career.
Sure.
I did it on a part-time basis, starting it right when I got out of college. And that was back in, good Lord, 1978.
Right.
So it was in late 78, early 79. But it really took off around 86, like I said. And so with that, how do you sell something like that? Well, I knew it wasn't just put a realtor's
sign out
the door.
right.
So I called them mergers and acquisitions and whatnot, and they educated me as to what to do. And I said, so they presented me with a 1-year contract, and I said, well, wait a minute, now I don't want to be selling this, like 9 months from now. Or
right, because you can't be working it, you can't be running it. Right.
And then my employees will find out.
Yeah.
It's like, gee, Joe's selling our company.
Right. I'm out.
Right. Exactly.
Down tools. Let's go.
My competitors would be like, oh, hey, Joe's.
Let's kill him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get it. I'm hearing you. Yeah.
So I told them I will not sign the 12-month deal. I'll do a 3-month. And they no, you don't understand how this works. We're just going to be laying the groundwork at the second or third month. And it takes a whole lot more time than that. And I said, I really do believe this is a God thing.
Right.
And again, some people believe, some people don't.
Right.
And so I said, but I believe if this is really meant to be, and I'm supposed to be selling this, it'll happen right away.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's not the way that works. I said, okay. So they humored me and we did a 6-month, but I promised them that I would renew it 6 months.
Okay. Fair enough. So to make them happy. Right.
Within 3 weeks, we had an offer. In the 5th week, we had a second offer.
Nice.
And in the 7th week, we had a third offer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Were they sensible offers?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, that's good. That's awesome.
All three of
Well,
them.
of course, now there's businesses that actually just do this for a living now.
Right.
But of course, going back there a few years ago, people weren't really thinking of it now.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's big business because of the baby boomers, but yeah, back then not so much, wasn't it?
Right.
Well, I'm glad it worked for you. But you see, again, it was all supposed to, wasn't it?
Yes.
So there was a path, and it's going to work anyway.
Correct.
Well, that's an amazing story. So thank you. I'm glad you shared that. Yeah. So, Jordan, as obviously you're the was it again?
Director of Communications.
Director of Communications. All right, Director of Communications. You should be hosting this because you're the Director of Communications. Anyway, so I'm going to ask you, what's the core mission of Higher Ground?
So the core mission of Higher Ground really is about helping families and youth that are living in under-resourced communities by helping them address their immediate needs, because you can't think long term if you're worried about where your next meal is going to be coming from, or worried about where you're going to be sleeping that night, or if you have gone through a traumatic event and you need mental health services. So we address those immediate needs, and then we help these families and their youth to find life's purpose and possibilities by helping them to experience as many things as possible, and then putting them amongst a ton of positive mentors that truly believe that they can achieve whatever it is they want to, and it'll encourage them. They'll continue to encourage them and to walk alongside them and help get them connected to the resources they need in order to reach those goals.
And so does this mean, when you were just mentioning then, obviously you're helping families, people on their own, whatever, all times of the hour. Is it like a 24-hour a day job, this, or are you just, well, yeah, you got to turn up at the doors at 7 and then when we're open, or how does it work?
So we're generally Monday through Friday from about 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
And obviously with our kids, it depends. Summer, they're going to be there at 10 to about 5:30.
Sure.
But during the school year, they're going to be coming after school until about 6.
So for them, it's more like a summer camp type
For the
thing.
summer.
Right. But then you've got the mentoring and everything else if people need to talk to other folks.
Correct.
Right.
So we have an after school program, we have case managers, we have a counseling center, food pantry, you name it. Everything you could possibly think of, and we're continuing to meet those needs. So as new needs are brought to our attention, we find new ways to help these families address them. Because really, as Joe was mentioning, some of these families, they've just been dealt a bad hand, and they just need someone to support them and walk alongside them to help them succeed.
Do you get the county sending people to you, or is this just word of mouth, or or does everybody send everyone to you?
So it's a kind of a combination of things. We're located next to an elementary school. It's one of the biggest elementary schools in Anaheim. And so we have a wonderful relationship with them, so they are sending us referrals on a regular basis. We're also part of 211 and Unite Us, which are platforms where when people register with social services, or Unite Us is actually connected to Kaiser Permanente, they can be referred to us through those platforms. Additionally, word of mouth is big. I mean, we've been around 11 years and just continue to grow and grow because as people become aware of our services, they'll tell everybody. I'm a prime example. So I actually started as a mom. My son's been in the program we're coming up on 7 years now. Wow. And back then I was a single mom, and it was after school care, and everything we do is free. Everything I've talked about, we don't charge anyone for anything. And so you have to think about, for a single mom, free after school care, it's a huge deal. And not only that, but we have these amazing mentors coming from Chapman, UCI, Cal State Fullerton that are mentoring these kids, helping them with homework. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
The kid's
right?
going to be a genius.
Exactly.
True.
And then I meet Joe, right? We did an orientation and he talked about the mission. Well, I'd grown up in Anaheim, and I just thought, wow, like I know so many families, friends who could have benefited from a program like this.
Right.
And so I started volunteering, and about 4 years after volunteering, someone retired and he offered me a job, and I took it. And since then, and during the whole time, over the course of 7 years, I've told my friends, I've told families, my son used to take football clinics, and I would tell other parents, and those parents' kids now come to Higher Ground. So you just see that word of mouth spread because it is such an amazing program that meets needs at different levels. We have everything from families that are experiencing food insecurity or sleeping in their car, to families that maybe they're not struggling financially, but they have a teenager that's headed down a difficult path, and everything they're trying
some
isn't
help
working.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
And
the
so,
big brother, big sister programs.
Exact type of mentorship where we're able to wrap around those families wherever they're at. Our big saying is we meet the families where they're at.
You were mentioning about, obviously, you give a lot away. People aren't paying for this. How do you fund yourselves?
So that's a combination of things. We're about, I would say, 45% grant funded now. Mm-hmm. And the rest is all individual donors and organizations. And then we have one fundraiser a year. It's like your typical fundraising event. Except, ours, we alternate years. So we have 1 year we have a formal gala, and then the next year we have a non-gala, which is much more informal but very fun. And that's our one fundraiser. And then besides that, we have individuals who Joe has found over the last 11 years who want to support the organization, as well as some corporate partners. And then again, about 45% grant funded.
Well, as with the Chamber of Commerce and your chamber members, we're all about businesses growing, and same with non-profits. if there's somebody out there that's listening today and they're thinking about being a corporate sponsor or a partner or what have you, you want to share a little bit about, is there a special program from that? Is it they just give you a call? Like, how does it work?
So there's a couple things. Yes, they can just call me, they can email me, and we can really talk through the different options. We have some corporate partners who are looking to meet their CSR requirements, and so we have them come out anywhere from once a year to 4 times a year to monthly, depending on the corporate sponsor, where their employees will come out and they get to volunteer with our kids for the day, or they help with a project. And it's a great opportunity for the corporation to give their employees the opportunity to give back and do something meaningful. We have other corporate sponsors who they don't need their people to come out, but they'll come in and they'll support with a project, or they'll sponsor at something like the gala, where they're able to get their name in front of, the 200 or 300 people we have at the event, but also they have that tax write-off,
Sure.
and they're able to support. And then for individuals that want to come and volunteer, that's one of the things that's really nice about Higher Ground, and our volunteers thank us for, is a lot of organizations, when you volunteer with them, there's a strict commitment, right? You need to guarantee you're going to be there twice a month, or whatever their requirement is. We don't do that with our volunteers. They just need to let us know when they can come, and if their schedule changes, it's completely flexible, because it's more about people finding out what area they want to volunteer in, whether it's with the kids, whether it's with administrative tasks, whatever it is, and then coming in when their time allows them to, because we obviously are examples of everybody has something, and it doesn't matter where you're coming from. We truly believe everybody has something to give.
So one of the main things that the Chamber sort of really pushes to members is collaboration, because nobody's going to figure it out for us. We're all going to work out together. With you being in the sort of large nonprofit world, are there other nonprofits that you would like to work with, or you do work with?
So we are big believers in collaboration, because the truth is exactly what you said. Nobody can be the the be all of everything, right? And I think historically, Joe and I talk about this regularly. Nonprofits always felt a sense of competition, right? But that led to walls, and they didn't collaborate. And that, that sort of, if
downfall.
Yeah, it's a downfall. And that sort of pick me, don't pick them.
Right.
If you're serving the same community,
Right.
the community who you're trying to serve is the ones that lose, right? Not.
Yeah. Preaching to the choir here.
And so it's all about working together. And so we're a part of several collaboratives. One of them is ACT Anaheim, which, you have, it's run through the Anaheim Community Foundation. You have, a lot of the big players who historically have been competitors now in the room working together.
Right.
Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, Girls Inc., Big Brothers Big Sisters, us. I think there's 15 of us now.
That's
and
good.
we meet once a month and we collaborate. In Fullerton, we're continuing. About 2 years ago, we expanded into 2 schools in Fullerton. We're working with the district on their campuses at Raymond and Orangeview? Orangethorpe. Thank you. I was like, we've been building our relationships with Fullerton, because people think, well, Fullerton and Anaheim, you're so close. But for some of our families that don't have transportation, we need those partnerships so we can refer, because there might be something that we don't do or that we're not the right fit for, but somebody else will be.
Yeah. Right, we're going to switch this to Joe, because I think he needs to answer this next.
Hey.
So when you started off, Joe, obviously I can imagine you started off, you're just talking, you mentor, then you start mentoring, then you start moving into other areas. Then you mentioned, now I need to do a 501c3. I created a sort of like an entity out of it. Share with me how you then moved into these key programs you did, because you do some serious key programs too. Yeah. So how did that sort of like materialize into one into the other?
Sure. There were, first of all, where we are based out of, which is in a 4-acre park. So there were 2 police-involved shootings in downtown Anaheim in 2012, and there was major social unrest. I ended up speaking with the mayor and his team. They were looking for organizations, as well as large churches that have youth outreach or whatever, to engage kids.
Right.
They had heard that I had a large group of kids in one of their parks. So I got called in. It's like, well, Mr. Baldo, who are you and what are you doing? But they were intrigued, because obviously I told them exactly what happened, which is what I just shared with you. And so with that, I also told them that I had even more kids in Santa Ana, and I was looking for funding to purchase a piece of property I had identified a piece, and it was a good half acre or so in downtown Santa Ana.
Okay.
Getting ready to open escrow and whatnot, and the city said, we really want you here. And they offered me the use of a park, and I thought that was pretty awesome.
So it is, isn't it?
I called the gang unit because I had met 2 or 3 of them out on the streets, right? You're playing soccer with kids and
Sure.
talking with them. And I said, look, I'd love to find out more about where you think I should be. Where is the greatest need? And it really came down to 3 different ones, which pick 1, 2, or 3, whichever one. But there was something about this one, which is Lincoln Park. And so they agreed that was probably the one. And so that's our location. That's how that happened. Within the first year or so, I got a phone call from a sociology professor from Chapman University. And they explained to me that they had heard about this transformation in the park where kids couldn't get in because of gang involvement. But now kids were actually in there playing soccer and eating and whatnot. And they wanted to know what happened. So I ended up meeting with them and telling them the story and how that all happened. And then I was called into the chancellor's office at Chapman University. And I'll never forget it because, again, it was one of those things that's like, is this real or am I? And the chancellor said, this little higher ground that you've got going here is so dynamic and so impactful and has so much more, I think, in terms of what can be done with it. We'd like to incorporate higher ground into our college curriculum.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
Again, not my idea.
Right.
So what happened was the next semester, when they were able to offer, they had a sociology class that was specifically for higher ground. So I was the proud recipient of a college professor in sociology and 19 students.
Wow.
And so higher ground that was playing sports with kids and helping them with homework and feeding them pretty much healthy food by that time. It wasn't just
Good.
pizza, right?
That's very important.
Yeah. Now suddenly there was a sociological aspect to it.
Yeah.
And so there were activities and exercises. The next thing that happened is halfway through that semester, I had that chancellor come and just experience what was happening at Higher Ground now, specifically because of that class.
Sure.
He was, I don't know what the word is, but he was not overwhelmed, but he was emotionally struck.
Wow.
And said, I believe in this thing even more. I want to help you. What can I do for you? And I said, any nonprofit needs good people and money.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I know that. And I said, people just need to know what we're doing, just the way you believe in it, because now you know. He wrote an article that went into the Orange County Register, and the next day Cal State Fullerton called.
Wow.
And they said, we just read this article, we're in, and the only regret we have is that we weren't the first one there. But we'll be number 2. And so to this day, we have nursing classes on our campus.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so the nurses are there not only to learn,
Right.
but also to engage with our kids.
Right.
And also we've got UCI and Cal State Long Beach. Chapman University has also college classes on campus. And so at any given day, there could be a college class going on in one of our modulars. I purchased used classrooms. So what used to be a 4-acre park is now a 3-acre park and a 1-acre higher grant campus.
Right, that makes sense. Because you got to house everybody. Sometimes it gets too hot. You got to get inside,
Well, and they have different purposes. So we've got a clubhouse,
Right.
which Major League Baseball was a client of mine. And so it's furnished by Cooperstown, the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's cool.
Isn't
That's
it?
really cool. It really is, isn't it?
And of course, we have a kitchen because food is very important. So there's always food going in
Good
and out.
food. Good food. Remember,
Healthy
wellness.
food.
Yeah, wellness and health. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. So you get the idea. We've got a STEM lab, so we do science, technology, engineering, a little bit of math. But
So
mostly
really,
math.
the organization is really always just going to continue to grow as things happen because there's new things that come along, and then you just adapt to what's going on and change the programming or whatever.
Right.
That's
so
amazing.
example in that, again, the needs are presented to us, and then we need to follow up on what we can do to satisfy that need.
Sure.
So probably somewhere around 2016 or so, we knew, and this is how it happened. Driving southbound on the 55 freeway, on the right-hand side, there was a billboard, and it was Chalk sponsored it, and it said something about teenage depression is not what was it? Is not a phase.
All right.
Yeah. And so I did a little bit of research in it, and of course had these professionals, and so we started our mental wellness, and ended up building a wonderful building where we've got marriage and family therapists and child psychologists and social workers working with our kids, but also with the moms.
Right, with the parents. That's a good idea.
And of course, everything like that went on steroids with the pandemic in 2020.
I bet it did.
So we were well equipped to do that. We didn't see that coming, but
sure.
But and so now that was a major factor in what we do. I think we have 10 marriage and family therapists, and I think 3 or 4 social workers right now.
That's really good. It's very important work today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We in 2000, late 18, early 19, the Human Trafficking Task Force asked us what we knew about human trafficking, which we knew very little.
Don't tell me you went to research it.
They educated it. They gave us a full education on it, and what they said was that they had been following us the last 5 or 6 years, and they knew the positive impact we had with prevention of gangs and drugs. But the largest criminal activity in the world, and right here in Southern California, is human trafficking.
And we've got a big part of that in Orange County, don't we?
We do.
A big percentage of it goes on here.
And it's because of the wealth.
Right.
Nothing more than that, right?
Wow.
So if there is internet and wealth, there's going to be problems like
Sure.
that. And so with that in mind, knowing that we needed to do something, I'm always a person to not want to reinvent the wheel. So I called all 4 of the universities that we work with, and I explained to certainly to Daniele Strupa as well as Fram Vergi. Daniele is Chapman, Fram Vergi is Fullerton.
Sure.
What we were being asked to do. And so I asked for their highly intelligent people in criminology, sociology, child psychology, to take a look at how these kids get sucked into this. We looked at several different programs, which were the human trafficking prevention programs across the U.S.
Sure.
Analyzed them, looked at what we thought were best practices, but then we also added a few things because of the vulnerabilities of the kids. Low self-esteem, improper use of the internet and social media, not understanding what a healthy relationship is. Mm. And that is the program that we came up with. And it's really just identifying all of those vulnerabilities. So therefore, we're educating these kids and equipping them so that when the perpetrators go after them, which they will, these kids see it coming and know how to react. And so we're in several schools. But the cool part about this program is not just the program itself, but it's the way we deliver it. And we engage it, as you know by now. Higher Ground is peer-to-peer mentoring. So to have the way the programs normally go across the country, it's a train the trainer. So that means the teachers learn how to do it, and then the teachers disseminate the information. We go in with college students, and it's a team of them. They're young, they're
Sure.
hip, they know social media,
Right.
and they've had bad relationships, and so they go in there and talk about these different aspects using their own
experiences and stuff.
That's it.
Right. That makes
That's it.
sense. Yeah.
And it's credible because it's the real deal,
Right.
right? And they engage these kids, and these kids just grab onto not only what these college students are saying, but to them.
Right.
They want to be with them.
Sure.
Right? They believe them. And so it's an incredible program. And again, it's just there was a need, there was a problem, we were asked, and that's how we grew on.
So obviously you have a lot of stories to share.
Sure.
But there's got to be one or two that's more near and dear to your heart. You mind sharing one of them?
Sure. No, I'm happy to. So back in the day, and this is probably somewhere around 2012 or so, I was sponsoring Higher Ground baseball teams. So we've got several of them coming out of the the elementary schools, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So I'm throwing grounders to the kids, and I'm thinking to myself, my stomach's growling. I'm like, I missed lunch. I think I've got a couple of food bars somewhere. And so I go to my bag and grab a food bar, and I'm eating it. The kid comes up and he's looking at me like, I got to have that food bar, right? And I said, would you like one? He goes, I'd love one. And he just slams that thing down. He says, you have more? I said, I do. I've got them in my car. I'll go get them. But you can't tell your mom that I'm giving you food bars, because when you go home and have dinner and you'd be like, I'm full.
Right.
And then she's gonna be like, what the heck? Why?
Yeah.
He looked at me like I was speaking Chinese. And I said, don't you understand? I mean, you can't. And he goes, there's no one home. I said, okay. So like, what do you eat for dinner then? It depends. Depends on what? Depends on what's in the cabinet. Well, okay, example, what did you have last night for dinner? You know that red and white box, and there's crackers in there? So I ate those. You know, I mean, how ignorant was I? There's an old saying, Andrew, that ignorance is bliss. I was a very blissful man.
Mm.
And so with that, I got those food bars from the car and I gave them the whole darn box. The next time I met with these kids to do practice, I had boxes of them for everybody. I didn't know, half of that team didn't have dinner.
Right.
I went to the superintendent of the school district, and I explained to her that we had a problem, that our kids were hungry. And she slammed her hand down on the desk and she said, finally, somebody gets it.
Right.
And I'm like, boy, I hit a nerve.
Yeah.
And she said, what can you do? And I said, I don't know. I mean, this is a huge problem.
Sure.
And so we worked together and we were able to get this food service, which was through, it was the food bank, but it wasn't Orange County Food Bank. It was Second Harvest.
Okay.
And so it allowed for not just any food, but good, healthy food that we could give the kids for dinner. But then we also had additional food from restaurateurs. Once I explained to some of these friends of mine that had restaurants, and so they would package small meals, and that way the kids could take those home for the rest of the family. Because great, one kid's eating, but what if there's 6 more
Right.
siblings?
You got siblings or something, right?
Yeah,
Right.
and so we got into the food distribution business just
Wow.
out of that. So
That's another part of your business that just keep adding to it.
yes.
Do you know, it is actually, joking apart, it is actually a high statistic that a lot of kids, the only meal of the day they get is the one that they get at school.
That's correct.
So it's quite serious, really. And I think, you're right. A lot of us don't really realize what's going on because we never really think about it. It's something we never really had to think about.
Correct.
And then suddenly when somebody tells you, it is shocking.
Yeah.
And it takes you back a bit, but obviously you figured it out. It's a good job. That's a nice story. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to move over to Jordan, because I'm sure Jordan's got a story to tell. She looks like she's got a story to tell.
Oh, yeah, she's got stories.
Why don't you just move that little mic over there then, and then you just tell me your story that's fresh in your mind and you want to share.
So my story that I want to share actually happened in the last year. And it was a story of a mom who her spouse just left. And she had 3 kids, all 3 in our program. And she came and said, I'm trying to make ends meet. She was trying to figure out where she was going to find food to feed the kids, and the job she barely paid for them to rent a room in a house that was a multi-family house, right? Limited kitchen access, couldn't really do groceries, so they had to eat out, but then we all know how expensive that is.
Yeah.
And so it was really, really tough. And so we have a program called Flourishing Families, that when a family goes through a major incident like that, sometimes it's a loss of a spouse, or in this case, the spouse left. It can be an illness, all types of things, but some kind of event that puts this family again in a hard time. And how are they going to overcome it? And so she enrolled in the program. She signed up for mental health services and started meeting with the case manager 2 to 3 times a week. Her kids started getting enrolled into our literacy program where they could be tutored to help them catch up because they'd fallen behind in school. But her case manager really started meeting with her and saying, all right, let's figure out a plan. She helped her with her resume. She helped her with, her any workforce development skills overall. She taught her financial literacy, figured out how she could save, found out there were programs that she qualified for that she didn't know she qualified for, right? That's the biggest thing. People don't know what's out there that they can qualify for.
There's lots out there, but you don't always know where to go.
Exactly. And so she got signed up and they worked with her. And then after about 6 months of working with this mom, she'd saved up enough that we were able to actually help her find her own apartment. Wow. She is now living in her own apartment with her 3 kids. The kids are still part of our program. She is thriving. And now she's not worried about where her next meal is, right? So she can think long term. So she just shared with her case manager a couple months ago that she wants to be a nurse. And she'd always wanted to be a nurse because that's her passion, but it wasn't something that her ex would, wanted her to do. He wanted her home. And now, and then since he left, she'd been barely trying to figure out how to make ends meet, right? Sure. So her case manager helped her sign up for nursing school, and she will be a nurse. And so just the transformation of that family living in a single room.
It's life-changing.
To their own apartment. That's incredible. That's transformational for the mom, but also for the kids. I mean, that changes their whole...
Does so much, really, than just put a roof over your head.
Exactly. And so it's just amazing things like that where you can help a family that is struggling but wants to succeed, but they need that help in those steps, figuring out how to get from point A to point B. And like I said, I mean, imagine she's now sharing with all of her friends that word of mouth about that. And so, just from that alone, she's been able to go out and encourage others. And so it's just amazing. And she comes and gives back as well.
I'm sure she would. She'd probably come back and help you out a bit when she's a nurse. That's an amazing story. That trumped your story almost, that one, Joe, didn't it? There's only, people always have to trump the other story, don't they? Do you know that's why we started this podcast? Because I know this sounds a bit silly, it's going off topic, but I didn't want to do open forums because whoever goes last basically wins. First person starts, they've got a good idea that everybody's going, oh, that's a good one. Next guy or girl talks, and then they trump them. And by the end, whoever the politician is at the end, they've won the game, right? Because now they've got all the stories. Right. So if we had somebody else here, they'd trump your story. But seriously, on a serious note, that's an amazing outcome, because you imagine it's not just a roof over your head or security or the fact that now you've changed your life in a world. Imagine how those kids have changed their worlds, how much security it's given them to be in their own home now. Mum's feeling better, kids are feeling better. The whole wealth program there, I can totally see it. That is amazing. So I'm glad you kept bugging us to share that story, because that was good. This is a good podcast. This is going to be good. I like it.
You say that to all.
No, I don't. Trust me. They'll probably phone in and say, you never said that to me. So anyway, but that's really good. Just out of interest, because you were mentioning there, and I know from personal experience, sometimes these different programs that people enroll in, they can be difficult to enroll. You have to fit into certain criteria. People want you to jump through these hoops. Is the process, I'm sure you've already thought it out. No. I'm sure Joe researched it and made it easy. But what is the process? Is it very difficult for folks to enroll, or how does it go?
So it's actually not difficult at all. That was one of the things Joe wanted to make sure of from the beginning, because the truth is, you can have families, like I said, that are struggling in one way, that another family is struggling in a completely different way, but they both could use the support. And so it's word of mouth, or they get a flyer, or they see us online, right? And then depending on what program they have, it's just we have a use our services button. It's super simple, and it gets them connected with the right program, and then there's an application. But there aren't hoops to jump through, because like I said, I get asked that a lot when I give tours. That's something we love to have people do, is come see a tour so you can see firsthand, right? And people will say, well, is there qualifications? Is there minimum, maximum income, that type of thing? No, because you don't know what a family's struggling with.
Right.
And so the only parameters we try to keep is we try to stay in Orange County, just because there's so
Orange County.
Yeah, right, Orange County, and there's so much need here.
Right.
And so we want to support our families. But as far as how easy it is to enroll, I mean, let's talk about after school care, right? It's just a simple application they fill out that really just gives us some background on the family, so we can identify their needs, and then obviously the necessary releases and liability and things like that. But it's super easy for families, and we make it that way intentionally, because when you're worried about some of these bigger
last
needs,
thing you need to do
is try and figure it out, and it's overwhelming.
Right.
The thing is, do you know how often our case managers are the ones sitting there with these families helping them fill out these other applications? Right. So if we're making our process as difficult, then
you're only gonna,
how are they ever going to get to the next step?
Right. No, that's true. That's true. So what do you think your major challenges are that you face that maybe the community can help you with, or just challenges that you just generally face?
Sure, yeah. The major challenges, I'm going to start with the biggest one. That is, there are so many needs, Andrew. And it is difficult to satisfy every need. and you need to discern as to which needs you can satisfy and which ones are like, you know what, I wish we could help you, but we just can't. We're not. That's not part of our mission.
Sure.
Now that's difficult to say.
Yeah. No, I can imagine.
And we rarely say it. And I think we do a poor job of
Say no.
we need to say it more often is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We've taken on so much, and what we do very well. And if we spread ourselves too thin,
Can't. Yeah. You
Right.
miss bits then.
and
don't
so
you?
that is a challenge. The challenge of having more money, right? With any nonprofit, I said it earlier.
Yeah.
What do you need? People, good people,
Mm-hmm.
people who understand and really want to help, that they're committed, and money to make it all happen. I think that the third challenge is that the game changed for everybody's life with COVID.
Right.
So I don't think I need to say much more than that.
Yeah.
But it has become more difficult on everyone, right? And so therefore there are more people who need help. And you can only go to the well so many times, then the well runs dry. So our job, the hierarchy, if you will, of our little nonprofit, is to keep that well having plenty of water in it.
Right. Right.
So,
that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So, let's stick on that point for a moment, because sometimes you've got to be a little more serious about things. Let's talk about money, because, I understand we're a non-profit organization, and the chamber runs just purely by membership only. So there's no extra funding there or anything, which is quite difficult because, as you just mentioned, a lot of people went through COVID. It's difficult. So they drop off, the membership goes down, and now we're trying to keep it open. So for yourselves, obviously you mentioned earlier there's some funding, and you've got to write these programs. So it's not just like you just call up, fill out a form and send it. Like, it's serious matter.
Right.
So I'm assuming you have federal funding sometimes?
We do have government funding.
State.
However, if you've read anywhere, it's going to be cut 40% or so.
Yeah, it's a huge chunk.
Right.
And then, of course, everybody else is sort of going for the same bit as well.
Exactly.
And state, well, we're nearly bust, so I don't know there's going to be too much there, right?
Correct.
Orange County, they try their best from the supervisor's office there, right?
Right.
So what are you thinking on that point? Like, how is it a case of some of your services can be sold somewhere to earn money, or where do you think, as a quick little brainstorm there, where can you, sponsorship, please, anyone, if you'd like to sponsor them, they'll take your checks. But what do you think your next stage is? Because that's where you're going to tilt somewhere, isn't it?
Correct. Again, we'll never want to charge the end user.
Sure.
So, if there's money possibly from education.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking schools, because you do an aftercare program. Maybe there could be something that comes, that way a little bit,
And that's the primary, I think, because the mission is the same, and that is to educate and equip these kids.
Yeah.
So that would probably be first and foremost, and that's what we're trying to do right now with school districts.
Because they'll be the losers at the end. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of non-profits out there, and not all of them are what they're supposed to be. We're just going to face those challenges.
Right.
But I think that's what I found in our business, is we had to find another way in order for us to be able to gain what we've lost. And you have a really large amount of projects.
Yes.
But as you say, you don't want to cut them, because the people who really need them, they're the ones who are going to suffer.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean you're going to go at the top of the list, does it, for federal grants and things?
No.
So, yeah, well, maybe there's somebody out there who's listening and says, I've got an idea. And
please call us, will you?
Give me a call, and do it. And that's another thing that we wanted to do as a chamber, just so you know, is once we're back in our building, we were going to start doing it, but we have a nice large boardroom, and what we wanted to do is bring non-profit members in, and for everybody to sit at the table and do those type of brainstormings, because everybody's in the same boat, but there's a way to figure it out, but without sitting there and talking it through.
And that's called collaboration.
That is called collaboration, and that's the number one ding, 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 ding. Yep. So yeah, that's very great. Another question I think I wanted to ask you is, especially in recent years, and you were mentioning about COVID, How much did you have to change, or the organization? Did you have to do a lot of changing at the time?
Sure.
What did you have to?
Sure, because the needs were still there and the needs became much greater. So instead of having a pantry where people would come in for canned goods or whatever, we had, which you might remember, there were so many churches and whatnot that had the lines.
There were a
cars.
lot, yeah.
Yeah. So, and pallets of food were delivered, again, federal grants. And so we would get all the dairy products as well as meats, a ton of produce, and the people would come by and we would make sure that some of our volunteers would make sure that if it was the back seat that it was cleared, or the trunk or whatever it was, and the trunk lid was up, and then we'd load them up with boxes and off they'd go. And it was about 17,000 families that we served.
Wow, that's a huge amount.
It was so much more than we ever thought it would be, but they just kept coming. But again, Andrew, as the people kept coming, so did the food.
So the food, yeah, it kept feeding itself, right?
There were trucks that would come by and they'd unload. I'm like, where did this come from? Well, just sign right here, sir. And I'm signing. I'm like, okay.
All right.
People were just bringing food.
So did you have to increase your storage area, or maybe refrigeration,
we've got these classroom modulars, and so all we could do was to set it up on a certain day of the week and tell everybody, and typically it was Saturday mornings, right? And everything was dropped off right there in the parking lot, and it was a drive-by. And if you're familiar with geographically where we're at, the line would go out of the higher ground area and it would go around the block. So it would go all the way down Broadway and then up East Street and then across Lincoln and then down State College and then into. And
that's a good mile and a bit, that.
And there were times that the line lapped itself. Wow. And I got on a bike and just to ride around to see it, because I couldn't believe it.
That's crazy.
I couldn't believe there were that many people. I couldn't believe we had enough food for these people. I mean,
did that, as COVID sort of withered away, that slowly came to a cease, let's say?
And so now we're back to a food pantry, and
and
I don't know if we have 5 or 6 or 7 different families come every day, but it's definitely fluid.
Oh wow, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Then in terms of the mentoring, if you will, the homework help and whatnot, obviously it was all online.
Right.
So we would beg our kids to turn on their cameras or at least tune in and do whatever it is we could do with them.
Right.
So, and that was not only homework help, but I mean, maybe it was jumping rope.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
we delivered jump ropes to everybody.
Yeah. Right.
Just to stay in touch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay. So as you're on a park, you get to I'm assuming you get to use all that land.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And you can. And so if you're growing porta cabins, whatever, you're able to put all that on there, and there's no restrictions from the city.
Well, only from this. And keep in mind, it's still the city's park.
Yes. No, I understand.
They allow us to utilize it, but we have built out, as I said, an acre.
Right.
And so they're
happy with that. They're good with that.
We need green space.
Right.
And 3 acres is good, but 2.5 acres is not. So
all right. Okay.
Stop.
All right. So you can't grow there. You're going to go down to Santa Ana.
Go to somewhere else. Yeah.
They'll let you do it. They won't let you leave after this.
Well, Fullerton is very interested. They are offering locations for us too.
Well, that's good to have another location. It would ease it anyway, because it's not too far away, is it?
No.
Just splitting it. No. Do you have another location, or just the one?
It is just the one, but we are also in schools in Fullerton.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah. As we said, Raymond and Orgethorpe.
So I suppose I'll ask you this question, Jordan. What are the short-term or long-term goals that you're looking for Higher Ground?
So I'd say short-term, to Joe's point earlier, we're going to continue trying to figure out how to address the emerging needs. There's just been so many more things, especially with inflation, that are coming up. And so, trying to figure out how to expand programs, but also, be able to keep quality. One of the things that we've been talking about is changing our food pantry into something called a choice market food pantry. but that's a huge undertaking. And so that's one of the things we've been discussing at length. It's a really cool concept, and it would be a great way for us to connect with families, but just looking, into those ideas.
Sure.
And then also expanding things like the mental health services. I mean, that is an ongoing need, right? And it continues to grow. I'm sure many of the listeners know this, but the problem with mental health in a lot of these underserved communities is that if you have Medi-Cal, right, less and less providers are taking it because the feedback is to jump through the hoops, to do everything. It's just too difficult, right?
Yeah.
But then, okay, so that means there's crazy long wait times for the families that and the providers that do take it, right? And then if you're not going to use your insurance, it's super expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And so how do you address that need? We've talked to the school next door, what's an elementary school, and, this is really sad to say, but they've talked about that what used to be a 5%, they considered tier 3, is now 20%, which are kids that are adversely behind and having major behavioral issues. But we know a lot of that's due to other issues that are going on in that family's life.
Sure.
And so how do you meet that need? And I think, we keep talking about collaborative efforts, and I think that's what has to happen. And so short term, looking to expand those collaborations and those partnerships. Long term, it's continuing. We always laugh about this because it's continuing to grow. But what does that look like?
Where you grow, yeah.
He was talking about Fullerton. There's a location we've been looking at Fullerton where we've been considering building a similar campus to what we have in Anaheim. We were in meetings in Santa Ana considering there. So it's figuring out where to expand. I just spoke to someone recently who was like, well, it's great that you're looking at other cities, but Anaheim's a really big city. There's probably other places
That's
in Anaheim.
true. Anaheim is a very
like,
big city.
So it's like...
Just ask them.
So it's like, where long-term do we expand? Even Joe and I met with people from Long Beach who were asking us about coming there. And so it's figuring out long-term, what do we want this to look like 10 years from now? And what can we feasibly do that it's not just this, explosive growth and then we lose the quality and the programs that we, have worked so hard to build foundations for.
You listen or hear a lot that's going on. And a while ago, and I don't even know if it got pushed through, but when you were talking about the soup kitchens, there was actually going to be some type of bill that was going to get passed where restaurants had to pass on their food off to... Did you hear about that?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that anything to do with what you were just talking about? Does that help or...
So it doesn't... So we've been the recipient of that a couple times, and it's great for maybe an immediate thing. So
yeah, it is immediate, right.
Because you have to use that in the moment. So
right.
we've gotten things like hot dogs that we can then give to the kids for a fun day.
Right.
Or prepared salads. One of the things that's hard to believe is a lot of the colleges are seeing their college students that are facing this food insecurity.
Oh.
If you ask many of the college campuses, both community and the four-year, Cal States, they have now created these...
Well, they have their own kitchens for that.
And they've created these food pantries.
Yeah.
But the issue is they still have students that, still need food. And so we have a lot of our own staff that are these college students or these interns that utilize the food pantry. And so those prepared salads and things like that, besides our families, will go to these students. But it doesn't really help long term because it's prepared food.
Sure.
And so it's not... And you have to have storage and you have to have a way for it. It's like you usually don't get a ton of notice of how it's going to go out.
Yeah, you just get a phone call. It's going to be there in an hour or whatever. And you're like,
and
great.
Like, well, that's great.
Right. But now I need to tell everybody else to come down and eat it, right?
Well, and you have no way of knowing because it's usually what they don't use. So,
sure.
If you're a restaurant owner and you have a great night, you may have, only a couple things left over.
Of
and then
course.
maybe you have a slow night and you have a ton of stuff, but you won't know in advance.
Yeah.
So it's hard to plan for.
Right. So in your mindset, because you probably already thought about it and talked about it, what would be an ideal situation for that? What would be better for the organization?
The vision, if we end up going forth, is called a choice food market. So the idea is current food pantries are set up that they hand you a bag and they say, or 2 bags, and they say, here's your food and you're on your way, right? But the problem is you're not addressing the underlying issues. You're giving a short-term solution, which they're going to be back next week to get another bag or 2,
sure.
right? And so a choice market is set up to look like a grocery store or a market, and families come in, and when they come in, they actually sit down with the case manager and they hear their story. So maybe, you have somebody who lost their job or went through a situation, or they need that hand up getting it back into school or improving their work. And so they meet with them and they talk to them about their family. They're given an ability to know, we have this much food available, etc. And then they're able to go quote unquote shopping gives them a sense of dignity where it's not just here you get what you get. No, you have some sort of choice in it, so you can actually use the food that you want to use. And the other thing it helps is for it gets away you have a lot of the food waste, because if I give you a bag of stuff, maybe you can't eat it.
I was going to say dietary needs.
Or maybe your family hates it. Maybe we give you a papaya and your family doesn't eat papaya. It's going to go in the garbage. So if you have a choice, you're able to actually grab the things that you want. So you get that sense of dignity while also utilizing the food you really are going to use. And so, but lining up the people who are going to donate that food, whether it's grocery stores or local markets, or through donors we're able to have money to purchase some food, whatever that looks like, having that market. And it doesn't have to be huge, but just that space that they can come in, get the food, but also and the key point is they're meeting with the case manager so that 5 years from now, they're not still coming to a food pantry. Right. They're able to have, those solutions and actually achieve their goals.
So with that said, does that mean that the system that we have right now, and I know it's the wrong name, I only know it as like food stamps, but is that system not really, is it broken down, it's not working as well, and that's why people are still coming to these pantries? Or it's not enough maybe to feed everyone? Or
it's just not enough is really what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's not providing enough food for the families. Back in March, there was also some additional money and emergency allotment that was given to families. And it ended in March, right? And it was about the average family, it was about $200 a month. Well, people go, well, it's $200. That's not that much. But if you think about how much in groceries you could potentially buy using that. Another big hit was the loss of the 99-cent stores. There was a lot of families that shopped at the 99-cent stores. And those went, gone. Those are gone.
Yeah.
And they could get things really cheap for their families there. Sure. And so, combination of a few of those things plus I don't know. I went grocery shopping the other day, and the total at the end, I was like, "How?
Oh yeah.
It's not that much food.
It's not cheap, is it?"
And so, I think that's the breakdown is especially here in Southern California. It may work in other states and other
that's
areas,
what people forget is how expensive it is in Southern California. Right.
It's so expensive here.
Yeah, it is. It is. As we're coming to a close of our episode, right, and we'll have you first because you got the microphone. We always ask our guests what they would like to share. Everybody gets, because I've asked loads of questions. We've been running the show. So we want to, it doesn't matter what it is. What would you like to share? What would you like to end this episode note on?
Well, I would like to share that if anyone's listening and they're intrigued by what they've heard, we'd love for you to come. We offer tours. You can reach out to me personally and I'll give you a tour. But the best time for you to come, where you could both support us and see what we do, is our upcoming non-gala extravaganza. It's September 14th from 4 to 7. And if you would like to join us for that, it's a great opportunity. It's on campus, so you get to see the whole campus while enjoying culinary delights from around the world. And you can come see the wonders that make Higher Ground what it is and hear some of these impact stories and be with other like-minded people who want to support the community. So if you are interested in more information, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you there. If you are a business and you want to sponsor, there's opportunities for that as well. But it will be a great opportunity for people to really get a hands-on experience of what we're doing and really get a feel for all the amazing stories at once that have been made possible simply because we were blessed with the space.
And if somebody wants to find out more, because for those who are listening on the radio, not watching the video, where we'll put the thing up there, what would be the website that they can visit to find out more about this event?
Okay, so that would be highergroundoc.org. Again, highergroundoc.org.
And a telephone number if somebody wants to call because they've got no tinternet?
Yeah, no problem. If you'd like to call, I'm going to give you my number to call. It's 714-661-6078. Again, 714-661-6078.
All right, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Jordan, for sharing your stories today. And you did trump Joe for a moment. But now we're giving Joe the microphone, so now he can trump you on your little ending there. So then we'll ask Joe for your final words. Sure. What would you like to share? What would you like to end this episode on?
Her ending is better than mine. You're right.
She got the website, telephone number.
Yeah, she's got it all. Yeah. I think I'll just end on a personal note, and I think that anybody who's listening or watching, just know that we are all called. My story is one of millions of stories. We are all called to do something. And when you actually just look into your heart and listen to your inner voice, there is something that everyone is called to do. Now, it would be great if 3/4 of the people listening say, I'm called to help higher ground.
Hey.
So there you go, right?
There you go.
But whatever it is, just take that leap of faith, because take it from me and my experience, it's led to something that I couldn't have even imagined. People want to give me credit that I'm a visionary and whatnot. I didn't see any of this coming. And I think there's days where, had I seen it coming, I would have said, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that, right? But getting back to the message, we do need the help. We need people and money. I want people to just open up their hearts and their minds to do whatever they feel called to do. And if it means blessing us, great. If it means doing something else, then that is your calling, that is your purpose, then go for that.
I think that's a perfect ending, Joe. Well done. And thank you both for coming on today. Really do appreciate it. And so for those of you listening, if you want to reach out to either Joe or Jordan, please visit their website or call their telephone number. And if it's on the video, we'll make sure that it's on the bottom of the screen there for you. And let's hope, we've probably got 6 listeners. So if 50% of them, 3 of them call in, you'll get something, right?
There you go.
We've got a few more than that, but anyway, I'm just messing around. But thank you very much, both of you, for coming in. I think this is amazing. I love listening to your story. Originally, it was Carol who kept pushing us, saying, can you get them on? Can you get them on? She did a great job too. And I'm glad she did, because it was very eye-opening today. So thank you both for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You were a perfect host, and we had a great time with you. So thanks for asking the questions and listening to the answers.
Excellent. Thank you. For those who've tuned in, thank you very much for listening, and we hope you'll visit nocchamber.com and select sign up for news at the top of the page to join our mailing list. For more interviews, visit chambertalk.podbean.com, and we invite you to like, follow and share Chamber Talk. Take care.